I'm working in office leasing. Dominic's told you how we're using technology like this sort of to kill my job. So hopefully we can sort of take both of those things and look at them in more detail. But before I do too much talking, we'll just show a quick video.
Next is different because we're using a combination of data, our own JLL live data that we've collected with publicly available data so that people can make informed decisions.
It allows us to show our clients' properties in a way that's never been able to be shown before, with a depth and with so much information.
It's refreshed every hour, so it really is live, real-time data. As soon as the team are putting new properties on, it's there. We've got the full scope in here. We're presenting everybody's instructions, and more importantly, we're putting off-market ideas, future developments. It's all that real value-added stuff. That's what comes out in this room.
But our clients want to know about demography, accessibility, even in some cases air quality, and being able to layer those things on gives them a far better picture of the type of markets that they want to be part of.
What we've done here is bring together the best of a whole bunch of different best-in-class technologies to create a much more tangible experience for the occupier search process.
The landlord reaction has been fantastic. A lot of the landlords equally see the benefit of a room like this, because what people often forget is that they are the people spending an inordinate amount of money on high-quality CGIs and promotional videos and websites. Well, actually, because of the 9 screens and the interactive screen that we've got within the studio, being able to see that in a much more impactful environment than ever before is really, really useful for them.
We've done away with the hard copy, paper-based approach that we had before and created a much more digital experience.
Everything you discuss in this room gets automatically emailed to you straight afterwards. You know, whether it is a map of the city right down to the planning of a floor in an office. That's great. It's sustainable, it's quick, it's easy to digest.
We're seeking to use technology as an enabler to enhance the experience between ourselves and their clients and really give them the best possible experience. But the human side will be there for many years to come, and this certainly isn't intended to replace that.
Our whole strategy around technology is to create useful customer products which speed up the process and provide a good experience, and then to scale it around the world.
Technology is changing everybody's lives. Why should we be any different? And I think this is a really strong start in terms of our technological journey.
So you can see, I don't often get a speaking part. I'm normally used because of my beard, lack of blue suit, and lovely hands. So I'm delighted to actually be able to talk today to you about Next Office, which is one way that JLL are using technology, putting our money where our mouth is to invest in this to improve our client journeys. So I think we've talked a lot about information today. There's obviously a huge amount of it out there, whether you're a landlord or a tenant. But the way that information is organised and presented, particularly if you're a tenant looking for new space, hasn't really changed for decades. Next is our response to this. We use the studio to pull together information from a range of different sources so that we can have better conversations with our clients and help them make more informed decisions. Now, our clients are increasingly sophisticated. They look at property through a very different lens to what they have done before. So whereas previously, historically, we've always put property front and center, we now use technology and data to have those conversations and to come at that problem, the need to create, to build the best office space and to occupy the best office space from a very different perspective. So we still need to know what the brief is, but rather than jumping straight into that paper schedule where you have a grainy photo, floor plan if you're lucky, an amenity list, a schedule of availability and a cost chart, we tried to get to the drivers of that demand. What outcomes are you trying to target? And then we undertake the journey in an interactive and transparent way using real-time market information. So we've launched this at a time where the technology is there to support these conversations. There's been a huge sort of movement in the property marketing sphere. The collateral that's created is just far superior to what we've had in the past. And when you're bringing property to market, you have that spike at the beginning rather than at the end. You're creating CGIs and fly-throughs. And what Next gives us is a great window to show that content and to engage with it. So whether that's CGIs of buildings which are under construction, the virtual fly-throughs that we've got from Matterport and other providers, or using data to lay over quite familiar mapping technology to challenge the brief that we're set, to have some different conversations, and to have some healthy debate in a collaborative environment. Now, I would love to say that this was my brainchild, or at least an idea that was generated in London, but sadly that isn't the case. Our Parisian colleagues got there first. And the success that they've had has been pretty impressive. In the first year of operation, they had almost 400 meetings with investors and occupiers. They have a 90% pitch success rate. And in a market where it's very unusual to be retained on a mandate, they've got 135 exclusive instructions. Now, they're putting all of this down to the delivery of this room. So the bar was set quite high for us, and I'm pleased to say so far we're going quite well. We're about 7 months into having the studio in London. We've had over 150 meetings with investors and occupiers. We have a 100% success rate on pitching, so well done us. And the room has generated more than enough fees to cover the cost of the initial investment within the 7 months it's been operational. So some good stats. So the success of the room is very much driven by the data that sits behind it, but the wow factor is that physical experience you get when you enter the space. So the studio itself was built by Tetris, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of JLL, which specializes in the design and build process. And then we've got 9 connected 55-inch display screens, which are infrared-enabled, an 84-inch co-create screen, and all of this is controlled by Surface Pro's iPads and a wand. But the clever bit is the proprietary app that sits behind it. This is what allows us to pull this data from a variety of sources and steer the debate, the conversations we're having in a very bespoke manner to come to the conclusions that our clients want us to come to. So we reckon that we can make this initial long list to short list process about 85% faster when we're working at our best. So I think before we show how we do that, we probably need to take a step back to see how property search from a tenant perspective has historically been undertaken. And it's listed pretty much there on the screen. You have an initial meeting with an agent. A brief is set. The agent then disappears for a couple of weeks to pull together a schedule of properties which they think respond to that brief. They make an awful lot of assumptions on behalf of their clients. The information that they then present is pretty high level, it's not always correct, and it's completely focused on property. Now, this isn't a great starting point, but this is where people are starting to make their decisions. They then go through that list, decide which properties they want to view, and go out on the road, maybe making some notes on the margin as they go round on what they like or dislike about the properties they see. They then probably have a review meeting where they look back at what they've seen, hazily remembered buildings, off of some fairly arbitrary notes, and then they shortlist. They look at the properties that they think respond to their drivers, they might do some space planning, and then they boil that down to a list of properties they want to re-look at with a senior decision-making team. Now, depending on the tenant, we think this takes between 4 to 10 weeks. But I think the most important thing here is it's grossly inefficient, and you use a lot of shoe leather. We're seeing tenants being increasingly mobile. They look at a much wider geography than they have done in the past, partly because they want to see what's out there, and partly because there isn't the availability in the markets they've traditionally been located in. I think occupiers are increasingly demanding of their real estate. They use it as a strategic asset to help them sell their brand and to recruit and retain the best talent. The process is often driven by a very senior team who quite often don't sit in the city and countries that the acquisition is being made in. Flying people in to walk them around the streets of London looking at properties that don't really respond to their business drivers is a huge, colossal waste of time and effort. So the scene was set for NXT. So how do we do it? Well, this is the interesting bit. I mean, the process starts off the same. You have that kick-off meeting where you get your brief, but we try to challenge it and work out what the real drivers are, what is the outcomes that are being targeted. We then meet probably a week later in our next studio, and we start on the co-create screen. But rather than diving straight into property-level information, we look at the market research that as a house we generate, the thought leadership bits that we produce about the future of work, how your office is going to need to change to respond to the changing world over the duration of your lease. We can then look at the data that we bring in from third parties. We can look at transportation. We can look at air quality. We can look at demography to see how your locational decisions will impact your staff. We then produce our own metrics, such as a market resilience indices, which looks at the performance, our view of the performance of submarkets over time, and what that might mean for your occupational costs over the duration of your lease. And then we look at buildings, the interesting bit. But we do it in a truly transparent way. We're not making assumptions on people's behalf, and we're using the good quality CGIs and fly-throughs that are now available to make that journey really impressive. CGIs of development pipeline are fantastic. The fly-throughs that companies like Matterport produce are amazing. It means you can walk the floors, look out the windows, go up to the roof terrace, see what the WCs are like, go and have a look at the showers and bikes and lockers. You've got a real sense of the building without leaving the comfort of our studio. We then go and look at real estate. We're not trying to get away from that. It's very important to go and look and touch and feel the properties that you might end up occupying. But we want to spend that time wisely. We want to look at the real contenders, the property that actually responds to your drivers as a business. We can then go back to the room. We can use that imagery that we have sort of in our database to do a proper review of what's been seen. We can then score those properties, re-weight the scoring and see what impact that has on your list, and define the next steps, normally a negotiating strategy. The results so far have been fantastic. We would say that. The first pitch that we did in the room was to the Premier League, who have recently exchanged on a new lease at Derwent's Brunel building. We're using it very much in our own property search, and we've had other people, Bain Capital, American Bureau of Shipping, Baker McKenzie, so a real broad mix of people from different sectors in the room, in the studio, using it at different stages of their search. But the big thing here is that the experience is only as good as the people that are involved in that process. We have worked with tech companies to reduce this experience. It's our agents, our data people, and our researchers that make sure that the app responds to what our clients want and what we forecast they will need over the course of their lease. This is a move away from a traditional transactory agency role, but it's not a move away from advice. We're becoming an advisory business, and we're using tools such as Next to make sure that we're spending our time concentrating on those high-value matters. We're creating ideas and opportunities for our clients. Now, I'm told that like any good tech project, you're only 60% done. There's a constant wave of innovation that's coming through that we need to be aware of to make sure that we capture it, bring the best of it into our experience so that we can give our clients the best journey. Part of this wave is also looking at how we can use it in other sectors. So we've got Next Office, but there's obvious tangents into Next Invest, Next Retail, Next Residential. We've had all of our colleagues across the business come into the room, and they can see the benefits to them and their business line of using a similar tool for their market. And then there's the geographical spread. We've got a studio in Paris, we have a studio in London. Nirvana is to have a studio across our global portfolio. We're currently both studios are video conference enabled, so somebody can be sat on their computer in New York or Hong Kong or Barcelona or wherever they may be and watch me or one of my colleagues giving a presentation in the room. But if they could actually sit in their local city, in our office, having that same immersive experience, then there's an awful lot of time and efficiency savings. But I think the key with all of this is that the client comes first. The technology that is there to improve the interactions that we have, the face-to-face interactions that we have, and it allows us to concentrate on high-value, forward-thinking advice and new ideas. So in summary, that's what we got. Thank you very much.
Yes, join the panel. Thanks very much. Conscious of time, people need to be places. That's absolutely fine.